asks solidarity with prevention and repression in a desperate attempt to defend Fortress Europe. Adopting this reform will legalize the lack of rights in Europe. It will mean arbitrary detention for even children. There could be pushbacks to so-called safe countries, and it will make SAR difficult. A lot of NGOs that will have to also defend themselves against instrumentalization. I'd like to state this clearly. This pact does not give the solution, and it could actually risk just externalizing our borders. Now, Commissioners, I have worked a life to assist those who are looking for rights in Europe, and I will not give that up, and no one in this House should do that. I will not give up anything when it comes to humanity. Thank you.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much. I'd like to give the floor now to Jan Christoph Hitchen.
President, colleagues, for years now, we had a blockade in the European Council in this matter of asylum and migration policy. And today we have the opportunity to unblock this blockade. And I call on you. Of course, it's easier to find something that you don't like in this pact, a point that you dislike where you can say, all right, then I'm simply not going to vote in favor. However, do you really want to make it that simple? For years we've worked on this, and we have found compromise. And we have compromise which try to ensure humanitarian standards, and on the other hand, ensure more order in the policies. Don't vote against this pact. If you vote against that, you ensure this remains as it is. And as it is, it cannot remain, dear colleagues. So vote in favor of this pact. This is a response to what the citizens want from us, to finally take action on a migration policy.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Eric Mackart.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we can agree that the European asylum policy needs restarting, but this asylum pact is not a new start. In fact, in areas it is a worsening of situations has already failed. We've seen this in Greece. That's what led to Moria and led to the chaos that we're seeing again and again, reading in the headlines. We as Greens would vote for this package if it meant that some of the problems would be resolved. But children and families being locked up in camps, that's not a solution. For years it's been attempted, but people don't disappear just because you lock them up or treat them worse. Migration is a reality that we have to face, and this facing of reality is something that this asylum pact is not doing. We can't just make things disappear because we want them to disappear. We have to assume responsibility for asylum policy, but it has to be an asylum policy that works and that doesn't capitulate to a right-wing pressure, that it needs to be based on solidarity, human rights, rule of law. It needs to be pragmatic as well, using those principles, and I hope we get this in the future because it's all the more necessary.
Sorry. Eric, you've got a blue card. If you want to answer, it comes from Mrs. Derimel.
Thank you very much, dear Eric. Thank you for allowing this blue card. And you're right with what you said in the criticism on Migration Pact. However, I do recall that the Green Foreign Minister, after there was a chance for agreement, said that this solution was urgently necessary and overdue. And I remember that the Greens spoke in favor of the SEAS at their party Congress, but the German government, with Green participation, was able to agree to this pact. So what do you say to this? I mean, today we're burying the right to individual asylum, and what was really unfair is being carved in stone. So this is really not a solution.
Well, I can report that members of the government are not welcoming this pact with opening arms, they have points of criticism as well. And what's important to me is, because I have heard from other noises from the Christian Democrats, that it can't be a question about how to find best majorities to do that. The Christian Democrats needed to find compromises with us because we found solutions, because there is possibility to find good solutions if the Christian Democrats after the elections do think about working along those lines rather than allowing Giorgia Meloni to push the Christian Democrats' position further and further to the right. That is quite important, and we can maybe discuss the rest over an apple juice.
Muito obrigado. Próximamente.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Ms. Sidlow.
You've got the floor, please, colleagues. You've got the floor.
Panie Przewodniczący,
President, colleagues, migration policy of the EU is wrong, very wrong, and it needs to be changed. But you can't put out the fire by adding more oil to it. The arguments, the words that are uttered here by those who are enthusiastic about the pact, I had heard in the past when the former Chancellor of Germany and President of France were trying to convince us that we should accept any amount of immigrants to Europe. Today you are putting on the table a pact which does not provide solutions to any of the problems. Do these proposals enhance security of our citizens? No, they don't. Will they help people who arrived in Europe to look for a better life and today have to spend their lives in the streets without any hope? No, they don't. No, they won't. Will they help those who actually trade in human beings? Yes, they will, because they know they'll have more money to help transfer any amount of illegal immigrants, because they will be later relocated to member states, and those member states who will not want to do this will have to pay. There will be money in circulation. They know it very well, so they'll further engage in this. So again, don't add oil to the fire, please. And I think that most of you know that these solutions are wrong solutions.
The next speaker is Annalisa Tardino.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, President. Now, this is the umpteenth debate prior to an important vote that will let us know if we will have an asylum and migration pact. The Lega delegation has asked for the following: to prevent departures and our borders without risking going to jail, like Minister Salvini, to set up centers for identification in the transit countries to managed by our European agencies, and to strengthen our cooperation agreements for returns. These are common sense proposals, and they do not support the criminal business that you know and promote. Now, the proposal today, however, is not very good. It doesn't take on board any of these objectives. It doesn't assist those who are in a situation of desperation, that are traveling through deserts. They do not assist our countries that are now conquered and that are on the that have a danger of terrorism, and they do not support our societies and our European cultures. Now, I'd like to state clearly that this is really a discount proposal, and we need to make sure that we protect our civilization, because we have to do that legally. We cannot become slaves or delinquents. This is the Europe that we want. We will build it with courage, consistency, common sense, and without any ideology.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much. I'd like to give the floor now to Cornelia Ernst.
This pact is a pact of shame and disgrace, because it abolishes the individual's right to asylum, and what remains, it doesn't take into account individuals' reasons for fleeing, but rather the lies of third countries, or some kind of quotas, or some kind of neurotic understanding of the right of migration. And you're not taking into account the people dying at our borders, people dying at the high sea. No. You are voting in favor of border procedures which would put children and families with children in detention. However, what you can't vote away is the resistance to this kind of politics, empathy, humanity. You can't even destroy with an axe. Just remember, activists, NGOs, they're not going to stop helping refugees, and the Turkish refugees who are helping other refugees every day. In 2015, I met a Catholic priest in Iraq, and there are thousands of people being killed, and this priest opened his church for those who were fleeing, regardless of religion. Those are the military positions of ISIS, and this is my church. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, whether we're going to be attacked. However, I'm going to remain, because I can't do anything else.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much. I'd like to give now the floor to Kostas Papadakis.
We condemn this inhuman pact. You say that you will deal with crisis with preventive jailing, with new fences, with the Frontex, and with these so-called voluntary relocations. These are the causes that cause shipwrecks like the one today in Chios, where 3 children died. What you are doing is that you are burying the Geneva Convention, because there is no more individual right to asylum. You are sending these people back to the hell of imperialist wars or to third countries. You say that there is an alternative kind of protection, for example, for the Palestinians, that they can go from Gaza to the West Bank. All of the governments in Greece are hand in hand with Orban and Meloni, and this is the end of the so-called EU of the rule of law. People should punish the EU and give strength to the Greek Communist Party in the elections.
Thank you very much, Mr. Papadakis. Next is Juan Ignacio Zoido. 1 minute.
Microphone for the speaker.
Hoy celebramos.
Today, this is an historic day. Following about a decade of blockage, the European Union has come to an agreement on the migration and asylum package. At least I hope. Now, this is the right time. According to the recent data, this is a crisis at the same level of what took place in 2015. We need to adopt this package to protect our external borders and any threats to our citizens' security. Now, this is an issue of responsibility and solidarity. It alleviates those countries that are frontline countries like Spain. It also gives certainty to those who need international protection. Now, we hope that this pact will mean that we can approach this with a solution. The EPP thinks that this will be a long-term solution to the benefit of all of Europe.
Mr. Zoido, next to Sylvie Guillaume. 1 minute.
We're at the end of a long debate on the immigration pact on the eve of the European elections, which obviously brings a political light to the vote we're facing. To determine our vote, we need to look at some questions. How will they deal with migrants? Are they going to help them? Is there going to have to be some collective responsibility and solidarity from member states? And I have to answer no, and that's unfortunate. We know that it's not going to resolve the problems that the member states are complaining of. Even worse, there's an even more a situation where rights are being suppressed. So we have to do something, but without solutions for the country of first arrival, there's still a problem. Some people are concerned that it doesn't deal with the major questions, the relations with the source countries of migrations. There doesn't seem to be anything there. Neither about the enormous resources would be required for this pact, nor the business model of the smugglers, or the necessity to have a European approach here to help legal routes. And we can see that climate refugees will increase in the future, so it's impossible to support this.
1 minute.
Thank you,
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen. This is possibly one of the most important debates that we'll have here at the end of this legislature. And I'm not telling you anything new here. The extreme left and the extreme right seem to have found themselves in the devil's pact to shoot this down. We've been speaking about this for 8 years, and hopefully when it comes to the vote in a few moments' time, we'll take the first important step towards a genuine European asylum and migration pact. No, ladies and gentlemen, not everything is perfect. Of course, you can always pick holes in things, but what's good about this pact is that finally we have a European approach. Finally we have stricter controls on external borders. Finally we have more solidarity between member states. Is it perfect? No. We think in Renew Europe, the Liberals, more needs to be done. Yes, there needs to be more official labour migration that's made possible. Yes, I'd like to see a tougher approach to human smugglers and traffickers. And yes, I would like to make sure that a child migration is protected. But let us finally do what the European citizens expect of us and vote in favour of this, and make sure that we have a European approach, and don't be told anything different from the populists from the extreme left or the extreme right. Thank you.
Tineke Strik, 1 minute.
Dear Chair, Commissioners, we had the chance to fix a broken system, a system now in which border states bear the brunt of the responsibility, fundamental rights are flouted, and impunity is the norm. This pact was our chance to share responsibility, to end pushbacks, to uphold the right to asylum and make reception human again. I acknowledge improvements. I'm glad that we stimulate resettlement, and that for the first time member states must offer solidarity. But I urge them to fulfill this obligation in the only meaningful way, by offering relocation. But I'm extremely worried that these rules systematically lock up asylum seekers, even families with children, at the external borders for months on end. This law erodes the rights and safeguards of asylum seekers and risks dangerous deportations. It allows for undermining the common standards, which is exactly opposite of what we need. We need fostering a common policy based on mutual trust. So we are far from fixing the asylum system. Let us indeed take responsibility to finally get it right.
I give the floor next to Patrick Jaki. 1 minute.
Dziękuję, Pani Przewodnicząca.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that we should just maybe replay the way you think. First of all, you decided to do away with readmission, so stopping the immigrants where upon departure. Then you limited everything that was related to fight with those who trade in human beings. And then you don't focus enough on the rights of our community in relation to immigrants. And then you talk about the countries and the potential penalties, 20,000 euros per one immigrant that would not be accepted. So it's basically a love letter to those who trade in human beings, because they know the money will be there and people will have to be accepted. What will be the results? They'll get richer, more people will be lost at sea, and Europe will have more problems. You will get monies from countries such as Poland in penalties, but you will end up resolving no problem at all. So more radical change in new elections is expected. Don't work for central and leftist parties. Work for traditionalists. We'll make sure that those documents are done away with.
1 minute.
Voorzitter, collega's.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're being submerged in thousands of illegal immigrants. Our people have had more than enough of this. And what's the European Union doing? Well, the exact opposite. The EU Migration Pact is going to oblige us to take even more migrants. Moreover, they're going to allow 4.5 non-European foreigners to be brought into the EU. There isn't even a mention of defending the borders against the invasion of immigrants. And this is being done deliberately, and they are deliberately replacing the European population. The colonization of Europe, the suicide of our unique civilization. Our borders must be closed. Asylum must go to a certain place because our people don't want this. They don't want more migration, they want less. This EU Migration Pact is complete madness, and that's why the people will call you to account.
Intervelt has a blue card for you. Will you take it? Yeah. Go ahead, Ms. Intervelt. Sophie.
Thank you, President. Regardless of the fact that your speech was full of lies and nonsense, I'd just like to hear if when you talk about replacement, are you talking about the replacement theory that was used by the Nazis, for which you've received penalties before? Is that what you mean?
Well, mevrouw Intveld,
Well, Ms. Intveld, I didn't receive any penalties because that's an official sanction of the European Parliament. I find it very illustrative that liberals like you want MEPs to be prevented from saying what they say, because these are the words of Ms. Johansson herself. She's used that. 3.5 million non-Europeans who will be coming in, that's too few. We need to have 1 million more because the people of Europe are becoming fewer and fewer. The demography is suffering. So replacing the population by immigration is replacement. Whether you like hearing it or not, it is a perfect description of what the EU is planning.
So now hold on a second. Now you want a point of order? Okay, go ahead, Sophie.
Whether it was an official reprimand or not, Mr. van der Driessen has been told that he cannot use Nazi terminology in this chamber and that he was not allowed to do so. So I expect the presidency of this House to take the necessary steps. Thank you.
We will look at what has happened. So next, Konstantinos Arvanitis, 1 minute. No, hold on. We have had correspondence on this. I know. We have exchanged correspondence on this. Okay. Mr. Arvanitis, please.
Dear colleagues, and I would like to talk especially to Mr. Lennars and the colleagues from Renew. Now, this game with the so-called two extremes, extreme left and extreme right, is very dangerous. My group is called the left. It's not called the extreme left. No, this... No, I did not say anything about your group. Today is a sad day for us, for Greece, for the countries of first admission, for the people that are on the run. You are cheering about this pact, and we worked for you in order to have something positive. But what we have here is a missed opportunity. Because why? Do we have something about legal pathways as we wanted? Do we have an obligatory resettlement in every member state without asterisks? So this is where we disagree. And about the issue of prima facie and the rest. I mean, what? So this is the basic issue for us, and this is why the left will not vote for it.
Minute.
Thank you, President. Dear colleagues, today I want to talk about the real essence of the whole migration debate. because really it has never really been about helping refugees. We all want to help people in need. This debate, however, in its essence is about whether or not we're able to preserve our European identity, our way of life, norms, culture and traditions. The promotion of mass migration threatens all that. It is in reality a social transformation project that is imposed upon the European people without, in most cases, ever asking them about their opinion and consent. Illegal mass migration leads to the disintegration of society. It breaks down European norms. It destroys public security. The first signs of that horrible disaster are already visible in many Western European cities. Think of just France, for instance, and the brutal, horrendous murders that have become part of French life. Public safety is deteriorating. The state is losing control. Public authority is slipping out of its hand. We in Hungary haven't given up on defending our way of life, our security and culture. The Hungarian people have been asked about this issue and they have repeatedly rejected illegal mass migration. This is why we firmly reject this pact. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor now to Elisabeth Vosenberg. 1 minute.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, the pact we are voting on today is an answer to those who say that the EU cannot do anything about the important issues. Now, the regulation on force majeure that was my dossier allows the member states to deal with massive influx of people, always, of course, with respect to the fundamental rights of the people that are asking asylums. And we also managed to include this instrumentalization of migrants, which is something that Turkey does permanently. So we will now have this solidarity between the member states and the way it will be distributed. And moreover, the countries will have to contribute so that all of the needs of a member state in crisis will be covered. Finally, I would like to say that the requests of the member states on the first line are being covered.
Bel Santos, 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam President.
Politics is art. If that's the case, this is one of the greatest illustration of this fact. But we all understand that after many years and the lack of a common migration and asylum policy, we're finally getting this carved into marble. We're finally getting this. It defends European values and it will be for the future. This is not my pact. This is not really the pact of anyone. It is what is possible. It's not the one of the xenophobic far right that is sowing hate and discord amongst all of us. Now, it is not the time to disengage. And it is the time for new struggles. We need to make sure that we monitor this, that we implement to this, and we need to defend fundamental rights of migrants and refugees. We have not stopped our struggle. We will continue to do it with more resoluteness.
Sahlani, 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioner, dear colleagues. I was forced to flee to Sweden when I was 15 years old. There were no legal ways, and now there are no legal ways either. So we can't leave this question in the hands of those of the barbed wire right. We can't leave this question in the hands of the dreaming left, because there'll be chaos, there'll be no legislation. So we can't just leave this question in the hands of human smugglers. So this is a first step. It's a first step to a sustainable, humane immigration and migration policy. This is the first step to have solidarity among member states, that we can work together so we can create better protection for people who are fleeing from oppression and war. And only together can we be ready for the next migration crisis and hold the border against the smugglers of human beings. Thank you.
Ms. Al-Sahlani, Damian Karam, 1 minute.
In 2015, I was a mayor near Calais, and I experienced the crisis. It wasn't a migration one, as you said, Madame Keller. I saw that. There were about 2,500 Syrians that were arrested there, and I was able to beat the far right in the next elections. As an MEP, I took that experience and I thought that I could assist in changing this type of policy. I hoped that we would have solidarity, humane proposals, the rights of the exiled, that the European Parliament should stick to its values. I didn't expect anything from the right or the hard right. They look at hate to cover up their failures. From the Renaissance, I would have hoped for some humanity. The socialists, I hope they would be courageous, naively. But here we are with this abject pact, and it lacks humanity, solidarity. To fight the far right, you have come into a pact with the devil. And we denounce this unanimously. We will not erect the walls of the Fortress Europe. You are legalizing the worst practices, as the United Nations rapporteur in Libya stated. Thank you.
Minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, would Alan Kurdi have been saved with the package of measures that we're about to vote on? Would all of the thousands of people who drowned in the Mediterranean Sea have been prevented? I fear not. The Asylum and Migration Pact doesn't do anything to stop the uncontrolled surge which are in the hands of human traffickers and to combat it. Therefore, I don't agree with this package on that point. Will the pressure on our societies be less with these measures? I'm a little more positive on this point. I expect that concluding files on asylum requests that have no chance of success at the border would reduce the number of secondary movements. And I think that the extension of the two databases to everybody concerned would work. And on these two sub-points, I can support this pact. On the others, I cannot support it. This is from my heart. Vlaams Belang have managed to send in a few amendments at this late stage, knowing that they won't have any success there. I've been involved in this for 8 years. We've been negotiating for 8 years. I haven't seen Vlaams Belang there at all. Don't fall into the trap, electors. Vlaams Belang has not been involved in this discussion. The NVA has. It's far from perfect, but we're doing our parliamentary work.
With strict use of this asylum regime, we would hardly have to take on any illegal migration, nor would Germans. So the Dublin migration regulation is going to be replaced. This pact is going to turn Frontex into a rescue organization, and then it's going to extend family reunification on to uncles and third cousins and anyone you meet on the way. And fourth of all, it's going to turn Europe upside down with this reallocation of refugees. So nothing in the pact says anything about border protection or the return of migrants, and that the migrants can continue to enter without identification. The reason is clear, because the EU wants more migrants, illegal or not.
Floor next to King Agal, 1 minute.
Madam President, Brussels imposes this migration policy, but it has failed. migrants have become more and more violent, and they remain in Europe illegally. European bureaucracy and the European left have learned nothing from their mistakes. This new package is very bad, and they want to force it through. It would even worsen the situation. Hungary, in the most decisive manner, refuses this pact. This would come with an obligatory sharing of migrants, setting up camps. We would be flooded by millions of migrants, and we would help people smugglers. We would like to stop illegal migration, and the Hungarian model is a successful example. There is a physical and legal block. Nobody can enter Hungary's property, Hungary's area illegally. We must protect our borders, and it should be us who decide with whom we live together. And this will be one question at the elections.
1 minute.
Hvala puno predsjednice, povjerenice.
Thank you, President, dear colleagues. 2 months ahead of the European elections, following 8 years of chaos and thousands of lost lives, we're facing key decisions. Massive illegal arrivals of thousands of people are often instrumentals in geopolitical games. For too long, they introduced misery, chaos, and security threats for both Croatia and Europe. We have been defending something as founded in good sense, and it is now being adopted. Even people who are naive recognize that we must put an emphasis on security, better protection of the border, better use of biometric features, and faster deportation of people who have no right to asylum. We have no illusions that these migration pressures will disappear. This agreement is not perfect, but it's better than nothing. Let us show that we are mature in these times without precedent. We must show that we can offer concrete solutions and not just slogans.
The next, Elena Yoncheva, 1 minute.
Je vous remercie, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam Commissioner, Mr. Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, for more than 10 years now, it's clear that European policy when it comes to migration is not working. This policy is not an efficient one, doesn't work for the member states, in particular those who are subjected to huge pressures at the external borders of the EU, nor for those requesting asylum. For the first time, the European Union will have a permanent system of reallocation and resettlement, which would be obligatory on member states and not just voluntary. We've agreed on the appropriate procedures to apply that will be efficient to deal with asylum requests, and on clear rules to deal with the situation under crisis terms. And this should lead to a common European solution and bring an end to the chaos at the external borders. And Commissioner Johansson, Commissioner Skinas, I'd like to thank you for your personal commitment in favour of this pact. Thank you.
Next is Damien Boselager, 1 minute. Okay, not here. Next, Shari Weimers, 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, if you want less migration to Europe, kill this deal. Only 3 of these legal acts will help in the fight against illegal immigration without sacrificing national sovereignty or imposing costs. The others will incentivize more migration. How will redistribution deter millions and millions of migrants destined to arrive in Europe the coming decades? It won't. Instead, the entire EU will mimic Sweden's migrant problems: gang wars, overrun welfare systems, and increasing Islamism all over Europe. Commissioner Johansson and the left won't be in charge after the EU elections. Then the center-right can negotiate a deal that stops illegal migration, locates the entire asylum process outside Europe, increases deportations, and support frontline member states without imposing forced solidarity. Colleagues, vote no, let the people decide in the elections, more or less migration.
I give the floor next to Lucas Mandel. 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Members, Commission, there are many persons here that it makes it clear it's a special day. It can be a very special day for the European Union with the motto, and it finally takes action. And so citizens can hear that we say, yes, we will going to actually address irregular migration and do something that people have been waiting for years. In autumn 2020, there was a proposal from the Commission, and it was very often criticized for good reasons. It was a good proposal. The negotiations were very long, and of course, without Austria's help, it would not have come to a conclusion. And I think now we need a majority here in the Parliament. And I think that the fact that the extreme right and the extreme left are against that means it's a good package. And I think this is a way of addressing irregular migration, above all in the interest of those people who are taking a very dangerous journey and in the interest of our citizens.
Applications, and I give the floor to Pedro Marques. 1 minute.
Thank you, President, Commissioners, colleagues. It may be easy to come here and criticize the Migration Pact. It is obviously not perfect, but it is a compromise, a moment in which Europe stops dragging its feet on migration, and therefore it is a positive moment. The pact will establish effective procedures to manage our borders, but never giving up on EU solidarity with the refugees. That's why the far right hates it. It will overcome national selfishness that left alone our border countries in the Mediterranean, introducing a binding solidarity mechanism between member states. That is also why the far right hates it. It addresses the need to cooperate with origin countries. If the EU really wants to manage migration, it must cooperate on the stabilization and development of these countries. And that is also why the far right hates it. Imperfect as it might be, this is one of the milestones of these 5 years. The far right hates it because they will have to live with the fact that we deliver. For the Europeans, yes, we will deliver today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marques. So we go to Catch the Eye now, and I start by giving the floor to Tomislav Sokol.
Thank you very much. Postignutim dogovorom o azilu i migraciji.
This pact on migration and asylum will enable member states to protect external borders and to fight the traffickers. If you like it or not, the member states will decide who can enter the EU and not the traffickers. The police at the external borders will determine who is eligible to apply for asylum and who is not. We need to say it clearly that illegal migrations are a security threat for European citizens. The European Union cannot welcome everyone who wants to come to the European Union only because there is a better life here. We need to prevent the abuse of the social and welfare systems. The left MEPs in this parliament have criticized the Republic of Croatia in managing the situations in which people try to illegally enter our country. This is why the European Union needs clear rules about migration.
Thank you, Madam President. Now, I will not vote in favor of this migration and asylum package for a very simple reason. There are certain reasons for a backsliding of the values, but also it means that there's no real European solidarity. Now, this pact will mean that there will be less protection for asylum seekers. There will be more violence on the borders, more violations of fundamental rights in terms of asylum and migration, and there will be an externalization of our European migration policy. For all of these reasons, I think that we have missed the opportunity that was ours to have a pact that was one that was effective and one that would give and respect European values. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Ana Miranda.
The world is looking to us for this vote. We do not want a fortress Europe with borders and that pays dictators to externalize our borders. This migration and asylum package is focused on security and to the detriment of human rights and our values. We cannot give in to the far right in this House and listen to them what we have to do. We know what we need to do. Protect people first. Walls leave aside European dignity. Walls do not respect individuals. Today, we are going to be on Luxembourg Square supporting all of those organizations and peoples who are fighting for a migration and asylum package that does respect human dignity and rights. Thank you.
Miguel Jambaski.
Nelegalната миграция залива европейския континент.
Illegal migration is submerging our continent and changing European history. It's changing the nature of European nations and countries. Illegal migration is a genuine danger, and you are responsible for this, ladies and gentlemen. What you've done to date has meant that we haven't been able to stop the smugglers, and now you're shocked. You're shocked at the consequences of what you have done, and you're scared now because of election results coming in, and what you've proposed is complete waste of time. We need to vote against this pact. This pact will lead to an increase in illegal migration. In this pact there are compulsory redistribution quotas set out, which will just make the problem worse, and the problem is still a risk both for you and your peoples.
As the King of Belgium said today, we need to look to the stars that accompany those who are migrating. Today, what we see in Palestine, we are actually proposing a pact that would sap the rights of those who are trying to come to Europe, that think it is a safe harbor. Now, we lack solidarity. We need to apply our principles and vote against this pact.
Finally, Sean Kelly.
I think most people in Europe are sympathetic to the plight of migrants and asylum seekers, and I welcome them, but they expect it to be done in a fair and equitable manner. Up until now, that wasn't possible because we have different systems across Europe. So I welcome this package. I think it will bring coordination in line with our obligations under international treaties and conventions, and will ensure that there's a cohesive and proper manner in which asylum seekers are assessed. This notion that everybody can come to Europe, legal and illegal, and stay here indefinitely, that upsets people, and that's understandable. They expect it to be done, and now we can do it in solidarity. And I think once we do that, and every member state plays its part, we will help to have a proper structure and also break the power of the people smugglers who have got away with exploiting the most unfortunate people in the world for too long. Now I think we can get it done properly and fairly and show that Europe is compassionate and works in solidarity.
Thank you very much. So now I give the floor to the Vice President of the Commission, Margarita Skinas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Honourable members, 4 years ago,
before presenting our proposals for a new pact for migration and asylum, the situation in Europe was full of images that we didn't like. Lampedusa, Moria, Calais, Canarias. But contrary to those who tried to craft the argument that all this was the result of Europe's making, we were very clear from the start that everything we didn't like about migration was the direct consequence of the lack of Europe. This was the cost of non-Europe. And this is what we are correcting today. The package that we have agreed with member states and with the political groups is a delicate, balanced outcome. I can hear from your passionate contributions in the debate today that not all of you are happy with the result. That's okay. That's a good thing, because these arguments clearly point out to a balanced outcome that leaves many people in agreement, but leaves other people in the fringes, disagreeing. This is what European democracy is all about. Actually, the thing you are about to vote today is the only thing that we didn't try on migration policy in this political cycle. We did all the rest but having a regulatory framework for migration. We did crisis management, we defended our member states against instrumentalization of migration flows by authoritarian neighbors. We ran from incident to incident, crisis to crisis, ship to ship. We did everything but one, to have a policy. And we are now nearing this moment. This is indeed a make it or break it moment. We are about to open the door to a new house, a packed house, which will be founded on the respect of fundamental rights and the dignity and the values we represent. Not a fortress Europe, but a well-guarded house with more secure external borders and clear rules on who is entitled to enter. A house that will provide shelter to those fleeing persecution, war and violence. A house where all asylum applications will be processed duly and fairly. A house that will also make sure that those who do not have legal right to be under our protection should be returned to the countries of origin with speed and dignity. And these effective rules, clear, cohesive, holistic rules, will also help us to make EU solidarity the new normal. Honourable members, we are now about to vote. You are about to vote. And this is a major moment for responsibility. This is a unique chance. Because, frankly, it is not enough for some of you to say that we don't want porous borders and do nothing about it. It is not enough to others to say that we want to protect the sanctity of asylum at all costs, but voting down this package. And it is not enough to say that you want to improve the rights of refugees and migrants, but stand against the legal texts that are precisely meant to do that. So, this is the moment of truth. Perfection is always the enemy of progress. The pact that you have in front of you is not rebuilding the Parthenon. We never claimed to do so. But we are making a marked, tangible improvement after many years of failures. We today have a non-system for migration in Europe. This might be good for those who want to win votes from the fact that Europe cannot sort out our migration problems. But it is not good for the rest of us. It is not good for citizens. It was not good for Europe. So, a vote against the pact is a vote against the Europe of solutions. I personally felt privileged and honored to be able to accompany this historic process from the day one to today. We are now about to cross the Rubicon on migration and asylum policy. We are about to show to everybody that the EU can deliver on issues that matter to our people most. Let that be the one, single, and resounding message voters will need to take when they go to vote next June. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice President. And now we will give the concluding remarks to all the rapporteurs, starting with Birgit Sippel. 2 minutes.
Madam President, colleagues, I think this debate has demonstrated that the compromise in front of us, of course, is not a simple one. Many contributors to the discussion made it very clear why, keeping in mind a very complex challenge that we're facing, why it was so difficult to find a suitable solution. Nonetheless, despite very distant starting positions, we have succeeded after 8 years in just a few months to come up with an overall agreement. And I think that really demonstrates the determination of many participants and also the willingness to find answers to such a challenge. For that reason, and in spite some of the well-justified criticism, today we have the opportunity finally to adopt urgently needed solutions for our situation, rules for responsibility, rules for solidarity. And that's why we demonstrate after years of inertia that the EU can achieve progress in migration questions, that throughout Europe, European law is respected, and member states have agreed to this with qualified majority vote, and they're going to be able to implement it based on their fundamental rights. And yes, it means that the Commission addresses violations by member states so that the systematic violation of human rights on the external borders aren't just consequently punished, but actually ended. And let me say once again, our efforts to have a migration policy based on solidarity does not end here. In the next legislative period, we need more measures, especially in terms of legal migration, and we also have to ensure the implementation, and we have to monitor the implementation, so ensure that this is a difficult but correct step in the right direction. Thank you.
2 minutes.
President Metsola, Margareta Skinas, Eva Johansson, ladies and gentlemen, well, here we are. After 8 years of hard work, we can act to respond to the migratory flows. We face a decision, important one, today. Let us be realistic and frank about this. If we're to reject this pact, then we're pushing reform into the future by at least 10 years. If we reject the pact, that means the status quo will be maintained, which is unacceptable for the member states, for the citizens, and for those requesting asylum. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I appeal to all the centre and pro-European parties to support this pact. And finally, to act to allow migration to be controlled and to have genuine solidarity in Europe. Just briefly, I'll recall that thanks to the pact, we're putting a stop to the chaotic situation at the borders of the member states in territories in France, like in Calais. Thanks to the pact, we will also be considerably reducing the number of people in irregular circumstances coming to the EU. Thanks to the pact, Asylum procedures will be made more efficient, more harmonized, and more respectful for the migrants themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, act or stop. That is our choice today. With my group, Renew Europe, we are convinced to act, and we will wholeheartedly embrace this pact on immigration and asylum. Thank you.
Next, Thomas Tobé, 2 minutes.
President, Commissioner, I think it is clear for everyone that is watching what is happening on the ground today, understands that we need to have a new European migration policy. We have horrific numbers of people dying in the Mediterranean Sea. We still see that the majority of people coming to Europe are irregular migrants. We see that we have a lack of trust between member states, and we also see that we have a lack of trust also from citizens towards governments, towards European politicians. Now finally, we have something on the table. We have something that is truly negotiated, and we have an opportunity now to find a constructive majority in this House to vote in favor of this migration pact. For years, this House has criticized the Council for not making up their mind, for not being ready to negotiate. Now finally, we have the Council ready to adopt this and move forward towards a true European migration policy. Should it then be this House who rejects it, who shows that we're not mature enough to take decisions that would actually mean that we will stick to our European values, but yes, we will have a more controlled migration policy than we have today, but we will also make a choice that we will prioritize the people in need of protection, and we will decrease irregular migration. And finally, we will also open up to cooperate more within the Union and together with countries outside of Europe. This is the right path forward, and I do hope, colleagues, please be responsible today. Please vote in favor of the Migration Pact. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tobé. Next, Juan Fernando López Aguilar, 2 minutes.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you very much. The European Parliament is the only directly elected institution and a legislative institution in the world. We are the democratic expression of diversity and the complexity of European integration. We come from 27 member states that weren't dissolved because we have an EU, and we'll have elections on the 9th of June. And I'm saying this to remind you that we have a legislative procedure, and it's been quite tricky, but of course it was going to be tricky, and none of the negotiators that have taken part in this can be completely happy, and neither am I. I've heard legitimate criticism leveled against this, and I respect it. But I've also heard disinformation and information that is not true, and arguments that can be refuted in what will be a historic vote. But I would like to say that I truly respect humanitarian organizations that have criticized this. We have the UN Commissioner for Human Rights, the Commissioner for Refugees, and others that have hailed this pact as an important positive step forward. But to those humanitarian organizations that have criticized, I make your criticism mine, and I have fought for this during every single negotiating session to try and put your views across. But at the same time, I can say that we are members of the European Parliament, and we are not activists here in this House. We have been elected to decide and to legislate, and not to engage in incendiary discourse which is sterile. We are here to take decisions to make things happen. The alternative to not voting on the individual elements of this package is worse. Not only will that mean that the status quo will continue, and that every time we have a plenary session we'll be saying that it's shameful, it's disgraceful that the EU is not doing anything about the right to migration and asylum. We have tried and we haven't managed. It's not about that, but the situation if we don't go for this, would be even worse. The EU would not, and citizens would feel that the EU cannot act even though it's tried. So after all these years of work, it is worth taking one step forward despite the limitations. There has to be order, there have to be safeguards and common rules where there weren't any, and we're going to vote in favor of every single element of this pact. Thanks. Thank you.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, President. And thank you particularly to all those who attacked Eurodac. Well, their attacks really just prove that Eurodac is at the heart of the problem. Migration is a big business. Please, could all those sitting on that side please read the Frontex report. The latest report says, literally, that trafficking groups in Mauritania are constantly putting ever more people on vessels and threatening their lives. So it's the traffickers who are threatening the lives of these people. And it's all those people who are telling them to go to Europe. Because the only people who actually are fleeing from Africa are the persecuted Christians, which you don't seem to care about very much. We've seen a 60% drop on the Balkan route, a 70% drop on the Hungarian entry route. But if you look at the Mediterranean, Western Mediterranean, and the Canaries route, we've seen increases of 50 and 540% over the past few months of 2024. Now, everyone except the members of our group voted in favor of an amnesty to legalize the status of millions of irregular migrants. Why? Because we're seeing many of these people on social networks now, in Facebook, Twitter, calling for people to access Europe through the Spanish route. This is just the fact. We've seen NGOs and associations that are publicly subsidized that are clogging up our inboxes with their messages. But what authority do you have to tell us how to vote? We're not here to defend lobbies, we're here to represent voters. Well, we're going to try and build a true edifice of law and order when it comes to this matter. Thank you.
Malin Björk, 2 minutes.
Thank you, President. I have heard many arguments today, but the one I've heard most is we have to have a deal. We just have to have a deal. But a deal must be judged on its contents. And I repeat why we in the left will vote against this deal. There is no solution to solidarity. There is no shared responsibility to receive asylum seekers. There is no stop to the death in the Mediterranean. Nothing. There will be systematic detention in the borders of Europe. The right to asylum will be dismantled. And there will be more deals with dictators and anti-democratic regimes. Just hear those arguments. So in the left, we stand for fundamental rights. We also stand with all those organizations that are demonstrating now outside this building, but they're also working every day to save lives, to demonstrate what it is with solidarity. Look at them and listen to them, please. And people here like to say that we are anti-European. I would say you are anti-European. We defend a Europe that stands up for fundamental rights. What do you think people want in the future? What do you think the young people of Europe want? They want a Europe that stands for democracy, human rights, solidarity, and fundamental rights. They want workers' rights, that's what they want, climate justice. That's the Europe they want to build. And they are not okay with us taking decisions that dismantle that future. And you say we play into the hands of the far right. I would laugh if it wasn't so serious. You are walking in their shoes. You are following in their leash, in their narrative, pinning people against each other, pinning refugees and migrants and refugees against workers, against young people, against families. You must stop. Instead, start to defend people's rights, all people's rights. Because that's the future that we have promised to build together for this Europe. A Europe that protects people, that don't deny them rights. It starts anywhere. It starts everywhere. It starts today with refugee rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Björk. Matthias Nemeth, 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam President, dear colleagues. Spoštovane in spoštovani, iskrena hvala za to razpravo. To zelo
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this debate. This shows the situation of the European Union today and shows the dangers for Europe if today we do not adopt this package. We're all aware that these solutions are not perfect for us. It's a compromise, but there is no alternative to this package. Should we not adopt it today, Europe would be faced with major uncertainty, and populists and the extreme right would be given succor. This is a strategic necessity, adoption of this package. It's a question of responsibility, and then we have to get down to implementation. And of course there'll be new challenges then and new problems, but we will then tackle them later. There is no alternative. This is what is expected of us as Europeans, and therefore I appeal, please support this package.
Sophie in 't Veld, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam President. As I stated earlier, I will support the package, but I will do so without joy. Now, every one of us in this room has his or her own reasons for voting in favour or against. And I'd like to say to the EPP, no, Greens and Left are not on the same side of the far right if they vote against. I think that's dishonest. And no, friends of the Greens and Left, those voting in favour, like me, are not on the same side of the far right or anti-European. I have concerns and doubt, and I too struggle with the dilemma. But that is why we are in politics, because having an opinion is easy. Voting for something perfect is not very difficult. But to take responsibility for dilemmas and difficult decisions is our job. And the pact definitely contains problematic elements, risks and weaknesses, and it's dishonest to deny that. But it's equally dishonest to claim that this pact is the end of the right to asylum, or that in itself it will lead to more violence at the borders. The violence today is not the result of the existing law, but of national policies and the absence of enforcement. I can defend the new reception conditions directive without any hesitation, and those standards, which I had the pleasure to negotiate, will apply across the package. And if I had written the pact, it would look very different. But there will not be any fresh proposals on the table or a better negotiation result. It is false to create that impression. And our job does not end here. We have an even bigger task in overseeing implementation and enforcement. And the best guarantee for European values is a solid majority of European Liberal Democrats who stand tall for human rights. So let's make it happen in June. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. in 't Veld, and that brings us to the end of this joint debate, and the vote will be held later on this afternoon. Thank you.
you.